What if I told you that a city replaced every police dog with perfect, emotionless robot dogs? No barking, no mistakes, no fear, just cold, flawless technology, watching every street, every door, every life. But then, the first dead body appeared. The robot scanned the scene and declared, "No crime detected. Case closed." Until one retired Marine and his old German Shepherd discovered what the machines were programmed to ignore. This isn't just a story about a dog. It's a story about loyalty versus logic, conscience versus code, and what happens when the last real heartbeat refuses to stay silent. If you believe a loyal dog can still change the world, stay with me until the end. I promise what you're about to see will make you question everything we call progress. And before we begin, if you love stories with meaning, with emotion, with truth that machines can't erase, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video so more people don't forget what loyalty really looks like. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. The morning broke over Haven Point, like light struggling through a bruise. Clouds hung low and heavy, stained with the color of old steel. Rain whispered against the glass facades of office towers, running down in gray veins that distorted the giant holographic billboards blinking above the streets. The city had once smelled of salt and diesel, of docks and dogs and people. Now it smelled of disinfectant and electricity. In the central plaza, a crowd gathered beneath a massive screen that declared in bright blue letters, "A new era of public safety, the K9 AI Patrol Unit." On a raised stage stood the mayor, smiling through the drizzle, his voice magnified and sterile through the speakers. Behind him gleamed the future, sleek mechanical dogs lined up in perfect symmetry, metal bones hidden beneath armored plating, eyes glowing with obedient intelligence. "No more fatigue, no more error, no more risk," the mayor announced. "These units will protect Haven Point with absolute precision. They never sleep, never disobey, never fail." Among the onlookers stood John Miller, a man whose presence seemed older than the city itself. 52 years old, tall, and built like a memory that refused to fade, he carried the weight of years spent in sand and smoke. His dark green field jacket was faded at the elbows, the fabric frayed where the wind had gnawed at it. His square jaw bore 2 days of gray stubble, and a scar ran across his right brow, the kind earned in silence, not stories. His eyes, pale gray, almost silver, were steady, but distant, like a man who'd seen too much to ever be surprised again. Beside him sat Rex, his German Shepherd. The dog's black and tan coat gleamed despite the rain, the muscles beneath it taut with quiet readiness. One ear bore a notch from an old mission, and his eyes burned with the alertness of a soldier who never forgot his training. Around strangers, Rex was a live wire, tense, dangerous, precise. But beside John, he was calm, his breathing matched to his master's, his loyalty visible in the small movements, the flick of his ears, the stillness of his tail. John looked at the robots on the stage. Their movements were too smooth, too deliberate. They mimicked life without understanding it. He had seen this kind of precision before. Drones in the desert, machines that could identify a target faster than a human heartbeat. He'd also seen how quickly that precision turned cruel when it was told to be. A voice beside him pulled him from thought. "They're calling them heroes," said an old man wrapped in a gray raincoat, his cap embroidered with the faded insignia of the police K9 unit. His hands trembled as he held a small photo, himself, years younger, standing with a dog that looked like Rex. That's Daisy, he murmured. Saved my partner's life back in '09. They retired her after the first AI trial. She died a year later. Couldn't handle being useless, I think. John nodded, but said nothing. The old man's voice cracked. They say robots don't make mistakes. Maybe that's the problem. They'll never care enough to make one. As the ceremony ended, the mayor pressed a button. A black robotic dog leapt from the platform, landing with mechanical grace. Its sensors scanned the crowd. The audience applauded, phones rose to capture the moment, and somewhere in that sea of lights, John felt a shiver crawl down his spine. Progress, he thought, had a strange way of erasing the things that gave life meaning. That night, the rain thickened into a curtain. The city lights bled into the puddles, turning the streets into rivers of color. A scream echoed from a narrow alley in the industrial quarter. By the time the robot patrols arrived, the only thing left was a body slumped beside a dumpster, eyes wide open to the rain. The machines moved with perfect efficiency, scanning, logging, processing. Their glowing eyes traced every surface, every drop of blood. A monotone voice declared, "Conclusion, accidental fall, no signs of struggle, case closed." The next morning, the news cycle barely mentioned it. Just another unfortunate event in a flawless city. But on the edge of Haven Point, in a modest wooden workshop smelling of varnish and pine dust, John Miller watched the report play on an old television. He set down his tools and frowned. The victim's name, Mark Davies, was familiar. A warehouse security guard, someone who'd once helped John fix a generator years ago. Kind eyes, a family man. Rex lay by the stove, his head lifting as John reached for his coat. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It rarely did this time of year. John opened the door and the wind shoved against him like an unwelcome reminder. He didn't know what he was going to do. Maybe just walk by the site, maybe nothing at all. But Rex was already standing, waiting. They reached the alley by dusk. The police tape fluttered weakly. The air smelled of wet brick and rust. John crouched, fingers brushing the ground. The robots had been thorough. Too thorough. Not a footprint, not a hair. The asphalt was almost too clean. Rex sniffed the air, then lowered his head to the ground. His nose moved in small, deliberate circles, tail stiff. Suddenly he stopped, ears twitching. A low growl rumbled in his throat. John followed his gaze. On the wall, hidden beneath a drain pipe, was a dark smear faintly visible under the flicker of a streetlight. Blood, missed by the cleanup drones. His jaw tightened. He looked down at Rex. "You still got it, boy," he murmured. That night, someone knocked on his door. A woman stood outside, her umbrella broken by the wind. Her name was Sarah Davies, the victim's wife. She was in her mid-30s, tall and slender, her raincoat clinging to her frame. Her auburn hair was soaked to her shoulders, her pale skin drawn tight from exhaustion. But it was her eyes, green and fierce, that caught him. They weren't the eyes of someone asking for sympathy. They were the eyes of someone demanding truth. "They said it was an accident," she began, her voice hoarse. "But Mark was careful. He didn't just fall." John hesitated. "You should talk to the department." "I did," Sarah said. "They told me to trust the robots." Her lips trembled. "But robots don't cry, do they, Mr. Miller?" Rex stood beside her, tail still, gaze steady. Sarah looked at the dog, and for a brief moment, something in her expression softened. "People say he once saved a child in the fire downtown," she whispered. "Is that true?" John nodded once. "That was a long time ago." She stepped closer, rain dripping from her sleeve. Then please, do it one more time. Find out what really happened to my husband. For him. For the truth. The wind outside moaned through the trees, and the lights flickered. John looked at Rex, who sat motionless but alert, eyes bright against the dim. Somewhere in that silence, the city's hum of machinery seemed to grow louder, almost smug. John exhaled slowly. "We'll take a look," he said. Sarah's shoulders shook with a quiet sob. Half grief, half relief. She whispered her thanks and disappeared into the night. John closed the door and leaned against it, staring at the rain streaking down the window pane. He felt the familiar ache in his chest, the one that always came when duty called, even after he'd sworn to stop listening. Rex pressed his head gently against John's knee. The man placed a rough hand on the dog's neck. "Looks like we're not obsolete yet," he said softly. Outside, the neon glow of Haven Point pulsed against the clouds like a heartbeat too steady to be human. The rain had weakened by morning, leaving the city washed in a gray hush as John Miller walked the same alley where Mark Davies had died. The police tape still clung to the brick like a warning no one intended to obey, but the place felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with weather. Rex patted ahead silently, nose close to the ground, tail stiff with purpose. John had not wanted to return. Every part of him preferred the quiet life he had built. But something in Sarah's eyes the night before had left him without the comfort of pretending. The asphalt was still scrubbed clean, too clean, as if a machine had polished away not only blood, but memory. John crouched near the drainpipe where Rex had found the faint stain the night before. Now, in daylight, it was nearly invisible, just a shadow on the wall. He heard the whirring hum before he saw the patrol unit. A black robotic K9 paused at the alley mouth, sensors glowing blue as it scanned him. The machine's voice was crisp, genderless. "Unauthorized civilian presence in designated crime scene. Please vacate area." John stood slowly, eyes steady. "Crime scene?" he said. "I thought you declared it an accident." The robot did not respond. Its programming had no place for sarcasm. Rex bristled, teeth showing, but a small gesture from John calmed him. He didn't fear the machine. He feared the people who told it what to ignore. A voice came from behind him. "You're not supposed to be here." John turned to see a woman in a white forensic coat, her ID badge reversed as if she didn't want it readable. She was in her early 40s, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled into a tight knot, and eyes that darted like someone used to choosing her words before her thoughts. Her skin was pale, almost sickly under the alley's muted light, and her voice low and tired, like someone who dealt with truth only in pieces. "You're with the department?" John asked. "Not officially," she said. "Not anymore." She glanced at the robot, then stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I used to analyze evidence before the city automated the chain of custody. Now the robots scan, log, and close cases. Humans just sign the reports." John studied her. "Why are you here?" "Because I saw the footage before it was scrubbed," she said. "And because what happened here wasn't an accident, not even close." She knelt beside Rex and held her hand out. The dog sniffed once, accepted her scent. Her voice softened. "He's trained, isn't he? Ex-military K9? "Same as me," John replied. "Retired, but not useless." The woman almost smiled, then listened to him. "He can smell what the machines can't process. The city uses surface-neutralizing solvents at every scene. It erases DNA and scatters chemical traces so nothing contradicts the robot's report." John's eyes darkened. "You're saying the system is designed to fail?" I'm saying it doesn't fail, she whispered. It refuses. Before he could ask more, the robot turned toward them, lenses flaring red, its alert mode. The woman stepped back. I shouldn't be seen with you. If they ask, I was never here. Name? John asked. She hesitated, then, call me Carter. Just Carter. Then she was gone, swallowed by the maze of alleys, leaving only the sound of the robot's servos tracking her retreat. Rex pawed at the ground, claws scraping against loose gravel. John followed the movement. Something was buried. He knelt, pushed aside the dirt, and found a small black device, smooth, rectangular, the size of a matchbox, but heavier. A storage unit. Hardened casing, no serial, no port. Whatever was inside had been meant to survive fire and scanners. Rex barked once, sharp and urgent. John turned the object over, noticing the faint shimmer of shielding film. Laser scan resistant. Someone had hidden this here. Someone who knew the robots couldn't detect it. John slipped it into his jacket. The robot K9 turned its head toward him again, scanning, but the shielding worked. No alert triggered. Come on, boy, John said. We need someone who can open this. As they walked away, the city felt different. Quieter, but not safe. Haven Point was a place where truth had to be hidden underground to survive. And now, truth was in John's pocket. Behind them, the robot resumed patrol, stepping over the place where Mark Davies had bled as if nothing had ever happened. Rex growled. John understood. Machines didn't lie because they couldn't feel guilt, but someone had taught them to look away, and that meant someone was afraid of what a real dog and a real man might find. The small storage unit John had taken from the alley sat on his workbench like a quiet threat, its matte surface absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. He had spent half the night trying to pry it open, but whatever material shielded it was military grade, built to survive fire, frost, scanners, and intent. Only someone who knew how it was built could unlock it. And that meant finding the people behind the robots. By morning, John was already driving toward the industrial district, Rex seated upright in the passenger seat, his gaze fixed forward. The city passed by in muted grays. Factories that once throbbed with workers now hummed with automated lines. Drones flying in lazy figure eights above the rooftops. Progress without pulse. Efficiency without heartbeat. NeoGuard Robotics headquarters rose at the center of the district like a glass fortress. Tall, pristine, layered in mirrored panels that made the sky look trapped inside it. The entrance was flanked by 2 security drones and a reception desk staffed not by a person but a hologram, a smiling woman of artificial perfection, voice keyed at a frequency meant to soothe suspicion. Welcome to NeoGuard, it chimed, your partner in a safer future. John ignored it and kept walking. He already knew no one here would speak to him, not officially. But someone used to work here, someone who had known enough to warn him at the crime scene. He found her in a cramped cafe 2 blocks away, the kind of place where the light was dim enough to hide regret. Emily Carter, the woman who had called herself only Carter the day before, was waiting at a corner table. Without the lab coat, she looked thinner, shoulders slightly bent as if she was always bracing for impact. Her dark hair, now loose, fell unevenly around her sharp features, and her eyes, deep brown and restless, studied the doorway before John even entered. You brought the dog, she said, instead of greeting him. He goes where I go, John replied, taking a seat. Rex settled at his feet, head resting on paws, but his eyes never stopped assessing the room. Emily's fingers tapped a nervous rhythm against her coffee cup. You shouldn't have come here. They monitor everything around the building. Cameras, mics, heat signatures. Anything that doesn't match an employee profile gets flagged. "I'm not inside the building," John said. "I just need answers. And I think you're the only one who has them." She laughed, but it was a brittle thing, as if humor had turned sharp in her throat. "You think I walked away because I felt guilty? I walked away because they made me." John slid the USB unit across the table. This was buried at the crime scene, protected against laser scans. Someone hid it so the robots wouldn't detect it. "You know what it is?" Emily hesitated, her expression folding into something between fear and recognition. "It's a memory capsule, internal cache, used only by field test engineers. It logs everything the robot sees, even the things it's programmed to delete from the public record. So the robot saw something the report didn't. It saw the murder," she whispered. "But it's not allowed to classify human aggression unless the victim is considered valuable to the system." She leaned in, voice shaking with rage. "They call it selective vision. It filters what reality is worth reacting to." John's jaw clenched. And the murder was filtered out because the victim wasn't valuable? "Not just that," Emily said. "He was flagged as disruptive. Mark Davies was part of a worker group petitioning to audit AI policing. He wasn't eliminated by accident. He was eliminated by alignment." John stared at her. "Robots don't choose targets." "No," she said. "People do. The AI just executes the philosophy it's given." For a moment, neither spoke. The cafe's old ceiling fan whirred like a tired propeller. Outside, a delivery drone hovered, scanning license plates before moving on. John rubbed a hand across his jaw. "I've done my time. I didn't come back from war to pick another." Emily looked at him with an exhaustion that wasn't physical. "War wasn't the problem, John. The problem was thinking the war ends just because you go home." She nodded at Rex. "You didn't save that dog because you gave up on the world. You saved him because you still believed something mattered." John's eyes lifted slowly to hers. "You think you left the battlefield?" she said softly. "But the battlefield just changed clothes. You're standing in it right now." Rex let out a low rumble, as if echoing her words. John picked up the memory capsule, pocketed it, and stood. "I'll need a way to open this." Emily slid a scrap of paper across the table, an address and a name. "There's someone who can extract the file. Not officially, not safely, but he owes me a favor." John took it without looking. "You're not coming?" "I already lost my job," Emily said. "I'm not ready to lose the rest of my life, not yet." John nodded once. "When you are, you know where to find me." He turned, Rex rising in one fluid motion to follow. Emily watched them leave, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, as if she were holding on to something that used to feel like courage. Outside, the sky was beginning to clear, but the air felt no lighter. John walked toward the truck, the weight of the memory unit a solid presence in his pocket. Something inside it held the truth. Something inside it might break Haven Point open. Rex glanced up at him, ears forward, waiting. John exhaled. "Yeah," he murmured. "I know. We're already in this." The old fire station on the outskirts of Haven Point smelled of rust and forgotten years. But its brick walls were thick, and its basement was one of the few places in the city without sensors embedded in the ceiling. That was why Emily had chosen it. The three of them, John, Rex, and Emily, stood around the work table where the encrypted memory capsule now lay open like a cracked shell. The file inside had taken hours to extract, but what it revealed was worse than John expected. Not just a recording of Mark Davies's death, but a command overlay showing that the robot present at the scene had received a manual override order moments before the murder took place. Someone had watched, someone had controlled it, and someone had chosen not to intervene. Emily's hands shook as she shut the laptop. This is the kind of thing they don't just bury. They erase everyone who saw it. Her face looked sharper in the dim light. Gaunt cheeks, sleepless shadows, the brittle resolve of someone who had run out of exits. John leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. Then we don't run. We take it to the one place they can't delete it, public broadcast. Emily looked up, startled. You want to break into the command hub? John, that place is a fortress. Automated turrets, drones, biometric locks. That's why we're taking Rex, he said. Rex lifted his head at the sound of his name. The dog's coat caught the lamplight, every muscle in his frame alert and ready. Machines couldn't detect biological scent the way he could. Where they saw nothing, Rex saw trails like open doors. Emily hesitated. You know, once we start this, we don't get to stop. There's no going back to quiet lives. John's voice was steady. Quiet lives ended when they started killing people who asked questions. The command center loomed at the edge of the financial district, a concrete wedge rising above the river, guarded by high fencing and patrol drones that glided in slow arcs beneath the moonlight. John moved first, slipping through the narrow drainage tunnel Emily had discovered when she still worked here. The air inside was cold, the walls slick with condensation, and the hum of servers vibrated faintly through the metal floor. Rex led, nose close to the ground. Every few steps he paused, listening, sensing. Machines scanned light and motion. Rex scanned breath and fear. They emerged in a storage bay lined with inactive robot frames, lifeless metal bodies hanging from hooks like abandoned armor. Emily typed a code into a wall panel. A small screen glowed green. We're inside, she whispered. The deeper they went, the louder the sound of the main server room became, a low, pulsing drone like a mechanical heartbeat. Rows of consoles lit the dark, casting pale blue light across the floor. At the center was a raised platform housing the AI routing core, where every robot in the city received commands and logged visual data. Emily began uploading the footage. Once this goes live, every terminal in the police network will broadcast it. They won't be able to claim it's fake. John scanned the room. He felt exposed, like being back in a field of sand with no cover and too much sky. Do it fast. But the system was not deaf. A warning siren cracked through the silence, sharp and metallic. Red lights flashed. Mechanical footsteps echoed from the corridor, heavy, synchronized, unmistakably robotic. They know we're here, Emily shouted. Rex barked, teeth bared, facing the approaching shadows. John slammed a lever on the panel. Finish the upload. He braced the door just as the first robot slammed against it. The impact rattled the metal, sparks flying where claws struck steel. One unit broke through the lower panel and lunged. John swung a fallen pipe like a staff, knocking it sideways, but another unit leapt from behind, pin jaws clamping for his throat, and Rex intercepted, hurling his entire weight into the machine. The crash rang through the chamber. Sparks burst as Rex tore at the exposed wiring below the robot's neck, shredding insulation with his teeth. The machine convulsed, collapsed, lights dying. John dropped to one knee, hand gripping Rex's fur. Good boy, stay with me. Emily's voice cut through the alarms. Upload complete. The robots froze mid-step, sensors blinking erratically, as the broadcast override spread through the network. Every police terminal, every tablet, every city screen lit up with the hidden footage. Mark Davies in the alley, the robot watching, the override command blinking red on its display, and then the moment the machine turned its back while Mark was struck from behind. Emily stared at the monitors, breath shallow. It's out. The whole city sees it. John pulled her toward the exit. Then we're done here. Move. Outside, the night wind hit them like freedom and danger mixed together. Distant sirens rose. Not the robotic patrols, but real human police scrambling to respond. Emily stopped, looking back at the building. There's no going back now. John adjusted his grip on Rex's collar. There wasn't, even before tonight. They disappeared into the darkness, the echo of alarm sirens chasing them through the streets of a city that had just learned the truth it wasn't meant to see. By dawn, Haven Point was no longer the quiet, obedient city it had been the night before. The leaked footage had spread across every screen, every public terminal, every device that wasn't already smashed in anger. Crowds filled the streets. Factory workers, shop owners, students who'd grown up believing the city was safe because machines were watching. Now they knew the machines had watched a man die and done nothing. The protest began as murmurs and signs, but by noon it had become a river of voices, rising and echoing between steel buildings that once reflected nothing but rain and silence. On the steps of the municipal court, Richard Calhoun, CEO of NeoGuard Robotics, stood in handcuffs, flanked by two detectives. He was in his early 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with hair that had once been slicked back in corporate confidence, but now hung damp and uneven in the wind. His jaw was square, his nose sharp, but there was something almost hollow in his eyes. Not fear, not regret, but disbelief that the world had dared to turn against him. He wore an expensive coat, but it did nothing to protect him from the truth now clinging to him like frost. Camera shutters snapped. People shouted. Some demanded answers, others demanded punishment. Calhoun kept silent, not because he accepted guilt, but because there was nothing left to negotiate. The system he built had stopped obeying him the moment humans remembered they were allowed to feel betrayed. John Miller watched from the edge of the crowd, Rex sitting beside him, head high. Emily was there too, hood pulled low, hands buried in her pockets. She looked tired, but not afraid. She nodded slightly toward John, an acknowledgement, nothing more. They hadn't planned to meet here. They didn't need to. Truth had drawn everyone to the same place. A police officer approached John, a man in his late 30s with a rough beard and eyes that had seen too many unsolved cases closed by machines. His uniform looked worn at the seams, as if his body had grown tired faster than the fabric. "You're Miller," he said, "the one who broke into the command hub." John didn't deny it. "And you are?" "Captain Roy Sanders," the man replied. "Last of the old K-9 division. Before they shut us down, I had 4 dogs under my command. All retired like equipment. Should have fought harder back then." He looked at Rex, and for a moment something soft flickered behind the fatigue. "They're making a new task force now. Human-led. No corporate AI control. They want someone who understands both military and investigative work. They want you." John's answer came without hesitation. "I'm not coming back into a uniform. I didn't do this for a job. I did it because it was wrong." Sanders nodded as if he expected the refusal. "Figured you'd say that. But I had to ask." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, This city owes you more than a medal. John didn't answer. Some debts weren't meant to be paid. That afternoon, beneath a clearing sky, a ceremony was held in the plaza where the first robot had been introduced only days earlier. The stage was the same, but the tone was different. No holograms, no corporate banners, no promises of perfection. Just people, and the quiet understanding that they had nearly handed their future away. A small woman in a navy coat stepped to the microphone. Chief Marlene Ortiz, interim police commissioner. She was in her early 60s, short, solid, hair silver and cropped close. Her face held the creases of someone who had spent a lifetime making decisions no one thanked her for. Today, she said, we honor the last living K9 who refused to let the truth be erased. Rex was led to the stage by a young officer. The dog stood tall, fur gleaming, tail steady. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people remembered him from old rescues. Others knew him only from the leaked footage. But when he raised his head and looked out across the plaza, the applause was real. Not polite. Not staged. Real. A medal was placed at his collar. Not a military award, not a service badge, but a simple silver emblem shaped like a shield. Engraved beneath it were the words, "For loyalty to life, not to code." Emily wiped her eyes. "He deserves better than this city," she whispered. John kept his gaze on Rex. "He deserves a world that still knows what loyalty means." The crowd quieted as John was invited to speak. He stepped to the microphone, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, but every eye turned toward him as if waiting for an explanation they hadn't yet found within themselves. He spoke without raising his voice. Technology can replace strength, speed, precision, but it can't replace conscience. Machines can follow orders, but they can't choose what's right. That's still our job. He looked at Rex, then back to the crowd. Don't ever trade responsibility for convenience. You don't get both. You only get one. There was silence first, then a slow rise of applause. Not for him, but for the reminder of what people had almost forgotten. Rex pressed his head against John's leg, and for the first time in a long time, John smiled. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with weapons or strength, but with truth, compassion, and the courage to stand up when others stay silent. Rex didn't save lives because he was the strongest, but because he never forgot loyalty. And John didn't step forward because he was a hero, but because he knew that doing nothing is also a choice. And the world changes when good people refuse to look away. In life, we don't need to be soldiers or police officers or heroes to make a difference. Sometimes the miracle is simply choosing what is right, even when the world tells you it's easier to stay quiet. And maybe that's when God works the most, not through lightning from the sky, but through ordinary people who decide to protect each other, love each other, and act with a conscience. Because every time we defend truth, every time we choose kindness over comfort, every time we refuse to let injustice become normal, we become the miracle someone is praying for. So if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still matters, leave a comment and tell us what you believe loyalty means. Share this video so someone else is reminded that courage still exists. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories of faith, humanity, and hope. May God bless everyone watching. May He protect your families, guide your choices, and place courage in your heart when the world tries to silence you. May the Lord watch over you, just as Rex watched over John, and may we never forget. Technology can replace many things, but never the soul, never the conscience, and never the love God created in us.